Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's GDG 3City meeting. This is International Women's Day edition. On this occasion, we have three amazing guests. It's Paulina Piątek, Kristine Glazuna, and Katarzyna Łukasiewicz. At the end of the meeting, we will have quiz. So please remember to stay with us till the end, as you will have a chance to win some amazing prizes. So here it is. Here is our schedule for today's meeting. Paulina will tell us 8 things any developer should know before signing a B2B contract. After the presentation, there will be some time for Q&A, so please prepare yours. Then we will have Kristine telling us more about SDK development for Android. And our third speaker is Katarzyna, who will tell us more about the Agile. And as we know, Agile is the new black. So that will be interesting talk. And as I said, at the end, we will have a quiz. Thanks to our sponsor, Bright Inventions. We will have some amazing prizes. To join the quiz, you will need to use Kahoot. If you know it, then great. If you don't know it, even better. You will have the occasion to start using this. You can download the app, or you can just simply use it on your website. So without further ado, let's start. We will start with Paulina. So Paulina, the stage is yours.
I lost you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Paulina Piątek. I'm an attorney. I specialize in IT and digital law. And today we're going to talk about B2B contracts. So let's start. And for those of you who don't know, as well as for those of you who already know, let's start with a quick explanation of what a B2B contract actually is. So B2B stands for business to business, which basically means that it is a contract concluded between businesses. For example, a B2B contract may be concluded between a software house and a developer who is a registered entrepreneur. So the most important thing to remember here is that a B2B contract is not a contract of employment. Employment law guarantees a certain amount of protection for the employee, regardless of what the actual employment contract says. In a B2B relationship, on the other hand, we only have the general provisions of the Civil Code and a general rule of pacta sunt servanda, which basically means what you see is what you get. Any provisions of an employment contract that are harmful to the employee will be, by the power of law, replaced with general provisions of labor law. And this is not the case with a B2B contract. When you sign a B2B contract, you basically are bound by everything in it, and only in most drastic provisions. The most drastic provisions could be changed in your favor by a court of law, but only in extreme cases. So what you must remember is that with a B2B contract, you have to fend for yourself and take care of all the details of your future relationship with the software house. So just to make sure that all of you remember, signing a contract of employment looks like this, whereas signing a B2B contract looks like this. So there are 8 elements that you need to look out for when reading and signing a B2B contract with the software house, and I will now talk a little bit about each of them. So let's start with the rights and obligations of the parties. Rights and obligations set out in the agreement should be clear, which means that you should understand them without any doubt. I do realize the legal language may seem scary to you, but as far as rights and obligations are concerned, there should be no doubt as to what you are signing up for and what may be expected of you throughout the duration of the contract. Secondly, rights and obligations of the parties should be well balanced, which means that it shouldn't be that you only have obligations and the software house only has rights. Also make sure that the software house is not entitled to unilaterally change any provisions of the agreement, especially the scope of your rights and obligations. I have seen such provisions in a B2B contract, and you must remember that if you sign a contract with such provisions, then the software house will be able to change your scope of duties without asking for your permission, and you will be obliged to comply. So next we have remuneration. And this part of an agreement usually gets the most attention, and there are a few important things to remember here. So first of all, the agreement should state the amount and the currency of the remuneration. Usually it will be a monthly fixed fee or an hourly fee. Secondly, you need to know how often and when you will get paid. So there should be clear regulations about payment dates. Usually it will be about 7 or 14 days from the delivery of an invoice. And speaking of invoices, there need to be clear rules about the payment method. Make sure that there are not too many conditions to satisfy before you are able to issue an invoice. You may be obliged to provide a timesheet, but the period of time between the end of the month and the payment date should not be too long and filled with too many formalities. Also make sure that your software house is not able to unilaterally modify your timesheet. And here is a real-life example of what a remuneration clause should not look like. This is actually the most complicated regulation that I have come across in my career. You don't have to read it. In this case, the software house consisted of 3 separate companies, and each month the developer provided a timesheet, which was accepted by one of the 3 companies. Next, the developer was informed about how much of his time was devoted to each of the 3 companies and received a percentage breakdown of the timesheet. Next, the developer was supposed to break down his monthly remuneration by that percentage and issue 3 separate invoices for each of the 3 companies. Each of the companies had 30 days to pay. So basically, for work in March, timesheet was due by the 2nd of April, and the payment was due by the 3rd May in 3 parts, which may come at different times. So as you can imagine, this is not very practical and shouldn't be accepted. The next thing is copyright. This is a very broad subject, and I will only talk about the very basics. First of all, check whether you are transferring the copyrights or only licensing them out. Only then you will know if and on what terms you can still use your work outside this agreement. Usually it will be a full transfer because it is in the software house's best interest. Another thing, if you are going to use any open source code in your work, make sure that the agreement takes this into account. Usually the copyright clauses are boilerplate and no one pays too much attention to them, but they usually state that you as the developer own all copyrights to the code. So if you use open source code, this will not be the case, and you may be obliged to pay contractual penalties for false statements. Therefore, if you plan to use open source, make sure it is taken into account in the agreement. And next, we have breaks in the provision of services. While employees have paid vacation, freelancers on B2B contracts need to take care of this by themselves. Most B2B contracts regulate sick leave, meaning that the developer can stop working for a period of time due to illness or other unforeseen circumstances. Most B2B contracts don't provide remuneration for such breaks. So if your software house does not allow you any breaks, no holidays, and no sick leave, because this is not an employment contract, at least make sure that you can appoint a replacement for times like this. The ability to appoint a replacement should be included in the agreement, especially if the developer is obliged to pay contractual penalties for each day of not providing the services. Remember that we are all human, we all need breaks sometimes, and every B2B contract should allow it. Next thing to look out for is non-competition and non-solicitation. Both non-competition and non-solicitation clauses should be clear, which means there should be a clear definition of what is considered competition, exactly what you can and cannot do. Make sure that they are not too extensive, because a B2B relationship should not be exclusive, and you should be able to take up additional clients to some extent. Secondly, there should be a clear time frame of when these clauses are enforced. Usually they are enforced during the entire cooperation, and sometimes they're also binding for a few months or even years after the agreement has been terminated. In such cases, if the non-competition clause is very extensive and basically deprives you of the opportunity to earn money, you should negotiate for the software house to pay you monthly compensation for each month of your complying with the prohibition after the termination of the contract. And again, if in an employment relationship, an employee is bound by a non-competition agreement, employment law automatically grants them the right to compensation of at least 25% of their remuneration. In a B2B agreement, you must negotiate this by yourself. Next, we have non-disclosure provision, which may also be a separate non-disclosure agreement. Similar to the non-competition and the non-disclosure provisions should clearly define confidential information, so you know exactly what is considered confidential and what isn't. Also, there should be a time frame explaining how long the information needs to be kept confidential, and it usually is for about 5 or even 10 years after your agreement has been terminated. Another important thing to remember is to make sure that you can disclose the fact of your cooperation with the software house or the fact of providing certain services for a certain client on your CV, and perhaps also in your portfolio. And this will prevent any possible holes in your official history of employment and will help you find new clients in the future. Next, we have contractual penalties. They will appear in any B2B contract because they are the easiest tool for the software house to claim any damages that you may cause during your cooperation. So when it comes to contractual penalties, make sure that they are rational, which means that they are not too high. For example, if you earn 10,000 zlotys monthly, then the penalties should not amount to 1 million. Try for them not to be higher than 3 times your monthly fee. Another important thing is that the provisions regulating the ability for the software house to claim the penalties need to be precise. Any circumstances during which the software house may be able to punish you financially should always be clear, and they cannot depend on the company's subjective opinion. They should be supported by facts and proof. It is also a good practice to expect that before charging you with a penalty, the software house should give you a written notice and an at least 7-day term for you to see that you are doing something wrong and to try and fix your behavior, so you don't end up surprised that something has been wrong for some time and you didn't even realize. So when it comes to termination of the agreement, make sure that both parties have this right and that these rights are equal. I have seen many B2B contracts where the company could terminate the agreement immediately for many reasons, while the developer couldn't. A B2B relationship should be equal, and both parties should have equal rights. Also, make sure that if there is a notice period for the termination of the agreement, that it is equal for both parties. For example, if the software house can terminate the agreement at any time with a notice period of 1 month, then you should also be able to terminate the agreement with a notice period of 1 month, and not, for example, with a notice period of 3 months. notice periods should be the same for both parties. Okay, so now that you know the most important things to look out for in a B2B contract, I'm going to show you a few of my favorite and most bizarre provisions that I have come across while verifying hundreds of B2B contracts. Okay, so in the first one, the contractor is obliged not to provide any benefits in cash or in-kind gifts, and not to accept such benefits from any person or entity with whom the company has or may have any economic relationship without obtaining the prior express consent from the company. So now imagine that one of your colleagues from your software house team has her birthday coming up, and you want to buy her a present. So under this provision, you, as the gift giver, must ask the company if you can give her a present because she is in an economic relationship with the company. And then she also has to ask the company for permission to receive the present. Next, we have another example, and the contractor undertakes to establish and maintain for the duration of the agreement an individual LinkedIn profile in accordance with the guidelines provided by the company. So I checked, and over 60 people keep their LinkedIn profiles in accordance with this company's guidelines. These are actually those people, only with their pictures and personal information removed. And last but not least, my favorite one, the contractor is obliged not to give any interviews or statements in any form, as well as will not share her image with the press and other media without obtaining prior express consent from the company. So this basically forces the contractor to ask permission for their private Instagram and Facebook profiles, as well as for any potential appearance in the media, even if it's not at all related to the company or even to programming. So believe it or not, all these three examples come from one contract, and my client who came to me for help has already signed it. So read before you sign. If you are able to understand code, you should also be able to understand legal language, at least to some extent. So before we move to the Q&A part, I would like to inform you that I'm proud to be a founder and partner of Grupa Prawniczki dla IT, the Lawyers for IT group. We are a group of attorneys who specialize in providing comprehensive legal services for the IT industry. And you can find us on LinkedIn, where we publish articles every Friday. You can also find me online on my website, as well as on my Instagram, YouTube channel, and Facebook group. Thank you for your attention. We can now move to the Q&A part. So if you have any questions, ask away.
Thank you, Paulina. That was really interesting presentation, and I think that this can be a lifesaver for many of us in the future. I don't see yet any questions coming on the chat. However, I also tried in the days before to collect some questions from some of my friends. So maybe to start the discussion going, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
I will ask away a few of those questions. So first question I got is really simple. What should I do if I really want to work for the company, but the contract is not ideal and they don't want to negotiate?
Well, I don't think it's a very it's a question for a lawyer, because I think it's a matter of a decision, and usually if a company does not want to negotiate, then it's a signal that the entire cooperation in the future might be problematic. I think that in a B2B relationship, business to business, every contract should be negotiable, even if it's a huge company and a small developer, they should be able to negotiate some terms. and maybe try to ask them reasons or try to give some better arguments, maybe based on legal basis. You know, maybe if you try to negotiate with more legal arguments, maybe they will be more keen to change some of the clauses.
Thank you. So now we have another question. So me being a freelancer contracting with a company is B2B contract?
Well, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, B2B contract is the definition of the relationship between two businesses. So between a company and between, for example, an entrepreneur. So if you're a freelancer, you can be either an entrepreneur and you can register your company in the central registry in Poland, or you can freelance as a natural person without registering. So freelancing doesn't always equal B2B relationships.
Okay, thank you. And now we have more of a comment than a question. Who is composing this strange contract? Yeah, I bet you from practice, Paulina, saw a lot of those kind of weird
yeah. Those three examples were only my favorite and most bizarre, but I review many B2B contracts, and you would be surprised, you know, about some of the clauses that are there. And this only proves that it is worth negotiating, because usually after I review such an agreement, most of the bizarre clauses are removed. So it is worth negotiating always.
Yeah, it's always worth to negotiate. That's true. So one more question. I was able to collect. So is so-called entrepreneur test hard to be passed? What are the consequences if not passed? It's more probably in the Polish law, something like this.
Yeah, it's test przedsiębiorcy. It's specific for Polish law. If you want to learn more about this, about how to pass the entrepreneur test, please have a look at my YouTube channel, because I have a video about this over there, and I explain this in detail. Well, for now, well, the entrepreneur test isn't hard to be passed if you are actually an entrepreneur, you know. So if you meet all of the requirements and you take care of your contract, so they do not resemble a contract of employment, and consequences, well, mostly they are financial, because if you do not pass this test, you may be required to pay some extra tax, or and to pay some extra social security obligations. You know, so the consequences can be severe and mostly financial. And as I said, have a look at my YouTube channel to learn more.
Great, thank you. And one more question. A person says that the proposed contract stated that it could not be terminated for a year. So is it permissible at all?
As I said, most things in a B2B contract are permissible. So if you sign such contract, it should be, it will be permissible. Well, it is not it is not advised to sign such contracts. So try to negotiate this. Maybe try to shorten this period for, I don't know, 3 months, for example, or try to strike this clause from the contract at all. But if you have this in your agreement and it is a B2B contract, it is in force.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions, at least for now. So I don't know, Paulina, if there is something more you would like to add?
Just thank you for having me. And if you come up with some more questions, feel free to email me. at contact@paulinapiatek.pl, and I'll just write you back. So thank you for having me once again, and have a great Women's Day and the rest of this evening.
Thank you so much one more time. And now we will move to Kristine. So let me share Kristine presentation. And when you're ready, Kristine.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so let's start. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristine Glazuna, and I will be talking about SDK development for Android. So a little bit about me. I've been working as an Android developer for around 3 years now. I started my career at TestDev Lab, where I was developing a testing framework for SDKs and also testing SDKs. And currently I'm working at Bitstack on 2 SDKs. First one being the Bitstack SDK, which provides non-intrusive in-game ads. And you can see a little example here in this picture. The ads are placed in billboards and other places you might expect ads to appear in the real world. And the other SDK I'm working on currently is PubGuard SDK, which provides protection from ad malware in mobile ads. So what is an SDK? Some of you probably already know this. It's short for Software Development Kit. And it usually consists of some tools, libraries, hopefully documentation, and services for other developers to integrate it into their own applications. In many cases, SDK will provide connection to some backend service, and the SDK itself will be just one part of a larger product. For example, you might be familiar with Firebase crash reporting. So they have an SDK that you can integrate into your application. And the other part of their product is that you can go to their dashboard and view all the data that the SDK is pulling. Then there are SDKs like Ad Network SDKs, for example, AdMob or Facebook Ad Network, chat SDKs like Twilio Chat or Sendbird Chat, and there are, of course, many others. So what should we keep in mind as SDK developers? First of all, we want to think about our own product. We want to build as a good product as we can, and we want to take pride in our work. And second of all, of course, it's the user. In this case, it's another developer who will be using our SDK. We might want to think how resource restricted their app might be and on what kind of devices the app will be running. In case of games, the application might be targeted at mid to high-end devices. But if we're talking communications or healthcare applications, then it needs to run on wider range of devices, including entry-level devices, because we don't want to exclude any users. Another thing to keep in mind is that we don't want to bloat our own SDK with third-party libraries and try to do as much of the work ourselves. This is because when our SDK size grows, then naturally the application size that's using our SDK will also grow. And at this part, some users might choose not to use our SDK at all. And another thing to keep in mind are permissions. We don't want to use a lot of permissions as SDK developers. There are some that are really that we need. For example, network state permission, because we don't want our SDK to try to do a lot of network calls while the user's device isn't connected to a network. Once you have considered this, there are two general ways of handling the core logic. First one being C++, and the other one is going fully native. In case of C++, this might be applied to performance-critical products as games because they consume more resources, or communications because we need communication applications and SDKs to run on all kinds of devices and don't leave any users behind. C++ projects and products can generally be applied to cross-platform products. So if the core logic is written in C++, you can later apply it on any kind of devices, for starting from Android, iOS, going to Windows devices, Mac OS, and even Linux. But each of these platforms will most likely require some kind of wrapper, some additional code to interpret the C++ library. Potentially, writing base logic in C++ can save some development resources, as most of your code is in one place, delivered by one team. It also becomes easier to test the product because, once again, if most of the code is in one place, it's easier to test. Other things to consider is it will need wrappers, as I mentioned before. For example, if the application that is written, or SDK that's written in C++, if it will be applied to Android or iOS, then we will need Android developers and iOS developers to write wrappers that will interpret C++ code, and it will link to Android code. This also potentially introduces some concerns, as there are more moving components and more dependencies. There are more places to make some mistakes and introduce bugs. But in case of Android native code, or the bridge being JNI linker, if you make any mistakes here, then most likely the code either won't compile or it will produce some kind of a very noticeable crash. And in most cases, this will be pretty easy and straightforward to fix for you. If you go the native way and there is no C++ core library that will be shared, then of course the code will be very platform specific. Android part will be written for Android devices and iOS for iOS. So this means that the dependency chain is flatter, and when you are planning for deliveries or doing your sprint planning, you as an Android developer, you don't have a dependency on C++. You don't have to wait on another component until they finish their part on this task. And this possibly means faster delivery times, but not in the product as a whole, but only for your specific component, as you are not waiting on someone else. So now that you have developed your SDK, you will want to publish it. And there are two main ways of doing this. One is to upload your SDK to Bintray or Maven or somewhere else. Using this way, you would write a small Gradle script, mostly just consisting of a few lines of code. Then you execute the task, and Gradle uploads both your AAR files and any other files that will be needed to describe your SDK's dependency list. And it will be just as simple for the user. They just add a few lines of code to their own application in Gradle file, and Gradle downloads it and all the necessary dependencies for your SDK. On the other hand, if you choose to provide just the AAR file, you might do this on GitHub or your company's webpage, or just send it over an email to your client. But here, Gradle will not help you. If you are just sharing the AAR file, you need to also provide your SDK dependency list for your client. And then the client needs to take those dependencies and add to their own application. Otherwise, their application won't run with your SDK. It will most likely not compile. But there's more. You have finished your SDK, but maybe it's interesting for some game developers. Maybe they want to use your SDK in a game. And this means you will probably have to build a Unity plugin because most games nowadays run on Unity. But this isn't that complicated. You don't have to become a Unity developer to do this. With some good examples you can find online, you can do this easily. So what do we need here? You will want to initialize your SDK inside of a Unity game. So first thing we need to do is find your SDK class. To find it, we need to know our SDK package name and of course the class that we will initialize it with. And then just with some Unity provided wrapper classes, we can create instance of your SDK class. Let's imagine your SDK class for SDK initialization. It requires some parameters. And the most common ones being an API key and Android context. In Unity case, we first need to find the Unity player. This class name will usually be the same. Package is Unity com Unity 3D player, and the class name is Unity player. You create an instance for it, and now you have access for the game from Java. And then you might want to find the context for this Unity game on Android. To do this, you call a few methods on your Unity player class, and just like that, you have your context here. And now that you are ready to initialize your SDK, just go back, find your plugin class, your SDK, and you want to call this method, call static. This means that the initialization method is static, and the first parameter is your method's name, being init, and all the other parameters following will be the ones that your method requires, being context and API key. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kristine. That was really interesting presentation about the SDK. And we have one question, if we may. Andrzej asks, what about Kotlin native? Don't you think it's a good choice for multi-platform SDK?
It might be for some projects, but on the ones that I have been working on, it's based on the whole team, and we as Android developers, we can't just make this decision by ourselves. We need to take into consideration the whole product. And in my experience, with C++, we needed it for wider ranges of devices, for all kinds of platforms. And also the work had begun before I joined the team. So there were some very smart C++ developers around, and they had already done the work. So Kotlin native is the way to go, but again, you need to consider a lot of things, and you also most likely will need to discuss within your team.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I don't see any more questions, so I don't know if you would like to add something, Kristine?
No, that's it for me,
okay.
Unless anyone has questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again. And now we will move to the next point. So we will have Kasia. Hello, Kasia.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy that I'm here with you tonight, this evening actually. And the topic of my presentation is Agile and the fact that it's the new black. This is the official title. I actually wanted to title it Agile is the new black. Oh no, but that would be a bit of a spoiler inside of the title itself. So yeah, this is the surprise for you coming. So during this presentation, I will try to focus a bit on the new black part and the oh no part as well. But I will start with introducing myself and actually explaining why I'm here talking about Agile. So I've been working with Agile both academically and practically in projects for more than 10 years now. And during this practice, I actually encountered multiple methods that try to outsmart themselves, method upon method upon method upon practice. And it really struck me that things do not have to be this complicated. So first, I will focus on explaining what I actually mean by saying that Agile is the new black. I will go back to the Agile Manifesto itself, and I will talk a bit about the Agile mindset that followed. This is the International Women's Day, so I definitely have to bring up the topic of women in IT, which is kind of related to the Agile as well. And then I will move to the idea of introducing more colors to Agile and the fact that if it's not black, then what it is, and where do we go from there. So when the term Agile was actually coined in 2001, it was thought to be this radical, fun, weird way of developing projects. Actually, people used to develop projects like the Agile way that was described in 2001 for some time back then. But it was the first time when somebody gathered all these practices, all these approaches, and decided to name them. And people really approached the idea with some suspicion, thinking this is great for small companies having wild ideas in software. We'll see where it goes. And then a few years later, when I was starting university, it was actually catching up. And even at the university, people started to teach about it because there were reports about these great successes. That the companies that started to work the Agile way, have the Agile project, etc., they actually increase their productivity. They produce better software that clients are happy. So yeah, people started to believe that there's something in it, although it was still a bit of a rookie way to develop software. But actually, by the end, I was finishing my studies. It turned out that the success for the smaller companies began to be interesting for the bigger companies as well, because if Agile methods can improve the efficacy of the teams, can produce better software, better understanding of the client's needs, and people actually want to work this way, the bigger companies wanted to attract also the good developers, the cool kids. They wanted to develop products at faster pace that would actually catch up with the client's needs. So then some ways of translating this Agile approach, extreme programming, Scrum, the classic approach, to bigger companies started to take place. And now it's actually the default method for most of the companies. The statistics actually differ because we have the IT industry is a large industry itself. So it's something between 50% and 75% of software development companies work in Agile for at least 3 years now. So it is a majority. And I believe that most of you also work in some kind of an Agile environment as well. So this is where we got. Currently, in addition to the classic, Agile approaches that we know of, so Scrum, Extreme Programming, Kanban, we have now also the Scrumban, which is some kind of form between Scrum and Kanban as well. We have a whole topic of scaling Agile methods. With SAFe, currently the Scaled Agile framework being the most popular one and beloved by the corporate companies right now. So this is probably the most popular one. I especially love the second most popular one, which is Don't Know. And it proves to be very popular. So I think that those of you who are not sure what is the method you are working in, it's probably this one, the Don't Know one. Although these are the people that declare that it's some sort of Agile for sure. We have Scrum of Scrums, and then we have a whole plethora of internally developed methods for a lot of companies. So now, 20 years after the Agile Manifesto, we have small companies, we have startups working the Agile way, we have huge corporations working the Agile way as well and reporting success with it. So it seems that Agile is this golden bullet, this little black dress, or I don't know, a black t-shirt, probably for the men part, that will go with everything. And this is actually quite suspicious for a lot of people. Is it still the same thing? And how one thing can make everybody happy? Obviously, it's a pizza. And come to think of it, I should have titled this presentation, Agile is the New Pizza, because this is something that seems to work for everyone, depending on the topping. So we have people who are classicists that believe that pizza is the only margarita and this is it. We have people who like to have a lot of the topping, a lot of some tropical fruit like pineapple on their pizza, and it still works for them. And we can call it pizza as well. So if we think about Agile as a very varied dish, but we still can't call it the same thing, it starts to make sense. However, we have a lot of toppings in Agile right now. So we have a lot of names, a lot of potential certificates that you can get. So do I have to get a certificate for being a Scrum Master, for being a Kanban team member, for being Scrum team member? We have, actually the teams is not enough. Now we have tribes in Spotify model. We have release trains, we have release train managers, and all of the fancy names. So actually you can get lost, and Agile, instead of being the simplified approach, begins to be this complicated one that you can get lost in. And in addition to this, these huge corporations are applying Agile practices, which actually makes people wonder if such a huge company like IBM or Google or Apple or Facebook, can they be Agile at all in its core? And if they can be, if there's someone that will certifyingly say that this is an Agile company, what does it even mean to be Agile? But it seems that all of the companies want to be Agile these days. Nobody wants to work at some classic disciplined waterfall kind of company. Nobody will say, come to us, we work at the waterfall way, you will feel safe with us. It's actually the other way around. So it seems that Agile is everywhere, it's in your face, it will go out of the fridge soon, which make people question, is Agile still a thing? Maybe Agile is dead and we need something coming from its ashes. And what does it even mean these days? So I guess that we should get back to basis. And this slide is as pristine as snow in the mountains of Utah, where in 2001, the software development practitioners gathered to coin the Agile Manifesto. And they came from very varied backgrounds. They worked on their own methods for some time. They had this crystal methods, they had extreme programming, they had Scrum in their minds. But they decided that all of these different approaches, common spine, they have this core around which all of these approaches evolved. So you probably saw the Agile Manifesto, hopefully, in your life, but just to remind you, it's about valuing individuals and interactions over process and tools, valuing working software over the documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And as such, actually, some people questioned if this is enough, if after 20 years the Agile Manifesto should be updated to somehow reflect the changes in the whole industry, the new methods, the SAFe method, for example. But one of the signatories asked about the possibility to update Agile Manifesto, said that this is actually the core. So these practices do not tell you how to reach the state of Agile, let's say, or how to do it. They do not tell you what practices you should follow. They just tell you the values that you should have while realizing such projects. And these words actually apply also to the Agile words. So if you are so obsessed over calling your team a tribe or calling your release a train release or something like this, so focus is only on the processes and tools, even if they are Agile, you probably would not be able to call yourself someone that follows the Agile rules. It's just focusing on process and tools. Same goes for following a plan. Even if you have a great backlog, you have sprint backlog, but you're so connected to the way it's written there, and you are not open to change in the requirements, you can do a very waterfall style product backlog. So if you think about these rules, they are very high level, but they describe sort of approach, a mindset, which is why to further describe this approach, the Agile approach, a term Agile mindset was coined. Because for values, obviously, might be enough for some, but if we want to put it into practice, we need some real guidelines how to build an Agile team. And actually proved that the success of Agile methodologies, so the improvement of efficacy, so this whole customer collaboration, it didn't came from using product backlog. It didn't come from using stand-ups or even any kind of retrospectives. It came from an attitude that the team has. So even if you cannot name your method because you are in the don't know part, you can still have more Agile mindset than anyone certified to be one. So values such as inner motivation, the attitude toward change, embracing the change, ability to self-organize, the feeling of responsibility as a team, respect, and kind of connection between team members. This is strictly connected with the Agile Manifesto, and this is what makes a team following an Agile approach. And this is what, if you want to think in the business way, this is what brings the actual value to your product, to anything. And two of these Agile mindset attitudes, so equality and the openness to others, is something that should make Agile teams a great environment to include also some other underrepresented groups, such as women, for example. But interestingly, if most teams work in some kind of Agile method, why we still do not have enough women in IT? Actually, the statistics are quite depressing, because in the European Union in 2019, we didn't even have 20% of women in the ICT sector. So this is really low. In the United States, it's slightly better. It's 20 something, but it's still definitely low. Actually, Google and Microsoft, they issue each year a diversity report, and they praise to be at 30% of women compared to men. So it actually shows that there is some work to be done. And why should we use Agile and Agile mindsets as a way to introduce more diversity if in 2001, there were 17 people present at the Agile Manifesto signatures, but they were all men. They were all middle-aged men. It's actually what it is. This is how the industry looks like. But what we should focus on is the fact that the idea behind this Agile mindset and Agile Manifesto is a very fair one and very inclusive. So if we keep this openness towards clients, towards our team members, this is what improves the way that the team operates. And actually, all of the studies around diversity in teams seems to show that introducing women into IT teams increase productivity, reduce conflict within the team, but most importantly, it affects in better software, so better suited for the clients and more user-friendly. Because if we create a software that is directed towards the whole humanity, it's very difficult to do it when you have only 50% of humanity somehow recreated within the team. So having different perspectives, not only gender-based, but all of the other underrepresented groups should be included. You get a better overview of what clients might need, what ideas you can introduce, which actually makes the introduction of women into IT and the agility very close ideas. So in reality, what should we do with the term Agile and what it actually is? One of the signatures said that any methodology that follows Agile Manifesto, any team that follows Agile Manifesto can be called Agile. So not based on people telling you that this method is Agile for pharmaceuticals, this is Agile for bigger companies, smaller companies, this is super Agile something else. This is not what's the most important. The most important is what's inside of a team and how the team works together and what is the mindset of people working in it. And actually one of the signatures, Mr. Kern, he said that Agile is like yoga. And I really like this citation because it says that this is your practice. You are doing the yoga poses, but how you do it and how you feel inside of the practice is totally yours. And the same applies to Agile. So you would not play basketball and say that you are doing Agile or doing yoga in the same way that you would not do something very complex, very high-level organization and say that you do Agile. So it's really thinking about the basic mindset of Agile. And the important part is that it's not the management, it's not the certifying bodies, and it's not even the coaches that can tell you that you are Agile or you are not. And they do not own the term. It's the teams and the whole Agile structure, so both Scrum and Extreme Programming, they were introduced for the teams to take control on the way they work and to self-organize and work closely together. Certificates and any courses, coaches are great. It's great to learn more about the practices themselves, about the methods, but I would recommend not waiting for, I don't know, the company to include a coach or to sign you to some course that will end with a certificate for you. It's better to look around in your team and think about, do we communicate? Do we feel responsible? Do we feel proud of the product that we are building? And start with this. This will make much better output than any kind of certificate would. And just think about the environment that you're creating for your female friends as well, about your different approaches to work, creating a very friendly environment for the women as well to work in, because this will actually improve your whole team effort and the products themselves. And think about the methodologies and practices as pizza toppings. And think about the Agile Manifesto, the Agile mindset as a pizza base. Because without the base, the pizza toppings are just a salad, a soup, sauce, depending on the toppings of your choice. So you definitely need this fundamental rules of the Agile way of thinking and approach to projects. And depending on your taste, on your needs, just adapt the practices and follow the ones that you feel are right for you. Even if it's a pineapple, no judge. I mean, if your company needs a pineapple in your pizza, then go for it, I'd say. You can screen grab this if you want to, because this is some further reading and sources. I have this academic thing of actually making sure that everything is evidence-based, so you can read something more about it under this links. And yeah, thank you. Oh wait, no black. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that it was interesting for you. I cannot see your questions right now, but if you have anything, I can answer shortly.
Yes, thank you very much, Kasia. I think that was the perfect wrap to our today's meeting. So thank you very much. As you said, we don't have questions yet, but maybe they will come. And for now, it's time for our quiz, sponsored by Brian Inventions. So thank you very much. And let's prepare our Kahoot. Let me know if you see my screen. And yes, join the game. You need to enter the PIN and write your name. And I will wait for more people to join. Okay, I can see first few people joining. We are about 17 people online now. Few of us are presenters and organizers, so I would like to have at least maybe 12 players. We have 6 already. Don't be shy, join the quiz. You can win some amazing prizes. Okay, we have 11 players already. So few last seconds. 13 players. Okay, I hope everyone who wanted to join had the chance already. Okay, so let's begin. So we have first question. Which one is the correct abbreviation for a contract between business entities? Okay, seems like most people answered already. Yes, of course, that was B2B. Great. Let's go next. We have Repczak on the first place, then there is Radek P and Andrzej. And the second question is, what best describes what a B2B relationship should be? Seems like most of you knows already. Seems like we still have one undecided player. Okay, time is almost up. So if you didn't answer already, now it's the time. Okay, so most of you knew it should be equal partnership. Perfect. Let's see how the scoreboard looks. Radek P is on the first place, then there is Andrzej and Damian. Okay. What should be the maximum amount of a contractual penalty? Those are things we usually don't want to think when we sign a new contract, but it's very, very important. It has to be one of those. So if you don't know, then just guess. Last 20 seconds. Yes, and the right answer was 3 times the monthly remuneration. Good. And Radek is still on lead. In what year has the Agile Manifesto been established? That's a quick one. Let's see if you will answer it correctly. I think we have some new players who joined. So that's good. Okay, and the right answer was 2001. Let's see how the scoreboard looks like now. We have Radek still on the first place, then there is Wojciech and Repczak. Okay, we are in the middle of the quiz. How many women were among the Agile Manifesto signatories? Well, that's a good question for today's evening. We're still waiting for a few more answers. 16 answers already. And final countdown. Yes, it was unfortunately 0 women signing Agile Manifesto. Radek is still on lead. Okay, let's go to the 6th question. So what is an SDK? This one probably is easy for developers. We have 16 answers already. It's almost like philosophical question. What is an SDK really? Okay, so almost everyone chose the right question, right answer, sorry. And now, after 6 questions, we have Radek on the first place, then there is Wojciech and Damian. And what are 2 general ways of developing an SDK? This one only has 2 options to choose, so choose wisely. How should we develop an SDK? "14 answers, few more to come." And only a few more seconds. Yes, the right answer is core logic in C++ or fully native. Okay, and now we have Wojciech on the first place, then there is Radek, and on the third place is Damian. On the fourth place is Crimson Sun, so still a chance to be on the podium. Last question ahead of us. Why might it be important to write C++ core for entry-level devices? I think this is one of the hardest ones. This last question can decide about everything. We have prizes for 3 first places. So can't wait to see who will win. And last few seconds for our last questions, and we will know the winners very soon. And here is the podium. On the third place, Crimson Sun, congratulations. On the second place, it's Radek P. And the winner is Wojciech. Congratulations, guys. This is great. I will show you how to contact me and how to get your prizes. Just let me share my screen with the contact. Okay, so now you should be able to see my screen. So if you are a lucky winner on the first, second, or third place, please contact me directly. You can just write an email or contact me on LinkedIn. You can also contact me on Discord. And also I invite everyone to join our Discord to have information about our next meetings. So I will leave this here for a while, so you can write it down. And also, I would also like to thank you all for this meeting. First of all, to our speakers, obviously, but also to everyone who participated, who asked questions, to every one of you who took part in the quiz. I hope this evening was interesting and you know more about the topics now. And yes, invite you to the next meetings. We try to meet every 2 months, more or less. So just take a look for our next meeting. And see you soon, everybody. Thank you so much.